Hello everyone and welcome back to Sendik's Weather channel. He's back. He's back. I'm back after my little break. I have been doing some revising for upcoming exams, of course. So I do apologise about the break in videos. But we're back today to have a look at the latest. Now, as many of you all know, it's been quite mild and quite pleasant to start April. Some of us expected it to be cold, but that didn't play out as we expected. But, you know, the weather froze up. It was quite close. All the cold air is going to go into Western Europe. But we're going to stay quite mild, which I'm sure a lot of you have been enjoying. Temperatures have even reached as high as 20 degrees in some places. So we'll have a look at the latest for the next couple of weeks, and some of you might like this update again as well. Some of you won't, but most of you probably will, including myself, because I've been enjoying the weather recently. It's been really nice. However, we might need a bit of rain, otherwise we might see some issues with that, such as wildfires. I've seen some issues with that as well. So if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. We're going to go through the latest from the models for the next couple of weeks to see what they are showing. Of course, they can always be wrong, and we've seen that recently. But it looks quite certain for it to stay quite high and settled, at least for the next week. Beyond that, we'll keep having a look. But at the moment, we have high pressure just over and just to the north of the country. And it's very pleasant at the moment, with winds in from the east or southeast. Now, what I will say is it's quite mild inland, but on that east coast, it has been slightly cooler. To some places like 10-11 degrees in that chillier easterly wind. But most places are pretty high, dry and settled. Now it looks like a very nice weekend, so get your barbecues on for the weekend. We're under some quite mild air. Cold air is plunging into Western Europe, but we're on the mild side of the high, so we stay quite nice. Temperatures could go a little bit higher than that, but 14 degrees is looking pretty likely. And then on Monday, again, 12s, 13s, 14s. As we are under that area of high pressure, could be quite chilly by night, but by day looks pretty pleasant. Now you can see that high pressure does move northwards into our west, but we are still dominated by it. We do keep the high pressure, so it looks pretty settled next week as well, and quite dry, and probably quite mild as well. Winds do switch very briefly to a cooler northwesterly, or no, actually easterly, northeasterly, as that high pressure does collapse, which is just to our west, and it collapses over the top of the country. Which could bring some slightly chillier air mass into the east and southeast, but again, a lot of models aren't bringing that in. As you'll see, this is GFS today, and we go, a bit more unsettled. Low pressure moves in from off the Atlantic by the 14th of April, but again, a long way off. Low pressure's sort of coming in from off the Atlantic, but again, by the end of the run, high pressure's building over the top of the country again, and that looks like a very mild ridge, with winds in from the west from off the Atlantic. And pretty dry, look at that, 18 degrees on the 19th of April there. Pretty pleasant and pretty dry, pretty nice, as some of you might say. The general theme, or the general consensus from the models which are all being agreed on, is for next week and this week as well. So we're mainly dry, could be slightly unsettled in the north as we go on, but it looks pretty dry. It's a pretty settled pattern. Obviously, it could be a bit cooler around the 11th, 12th of April, but we're not expecting much to last because we're not seeing much of a response to that strat warming. That high looks like it's going to collapse and move southwards, and we're going to return slightly more unsettled for a time into the week after next. But again, it's a long way off, so we'll keep you posted. But looks pretty settled, especially for next week and over the weekend. So with the GEM next, the Canadian model, let's see what it shows. It winds staying from the east, but it's pretty mild, maybe slightly cooler again in that east and southeastern portion, but under some pretty mild air masses. We're actually attempting to bring up some very mild air masses from the south. Man, high pressure just, with the GEM, doesn't really topple, but kind of just sits over the top of the country. That low pressure is going towards Greenland and Iceland and Scandinavia, and we stay pretty dry with winds in from the west. By the very end of the run, you can see like a plume of warm air, or maybe even hot air. The first signs of pretty warm air moving up from the southwest, from Spain, and you can see all the hot air is gathering pace towards the northern parts of Africa, getting ready for the summer, which again it's a long way off, but they do start developing this time of year. But by the end of the GEM run on Sunday the 13th, so this next weekend coming up, 21 degrees on the 13th of April. So pretty mild with the GEM. Pretty mild run, if I do say so myself. Now, if we have a look at the ECM, we'll look at the midnight run. There's not much change. High pressure sits over and just to the west of the country, bringing in the wind from the northeast, or just over the top of the country, and it stays pretty mild. So pretty mild, pretty dry, quite settled. Eventually, it turns more unsettled into that by day 10, so that Sunday period, a little bit more unsettled, but not greatly unsettled. High pressure begins to re-establish itself over the top of the country and to our north, pretty much just high pressure centred everywhere, and it stays pretty mild with winds in from the east and southeast. Now, if we did see this low pressure, such as just to our south here, if that ran into that air, which is quite warm aloft, that could actually be the first thunderstorms of the year. But again, it's a long way off. But if you did see milder air masses and then a low pressure running in from off the Atlantic or from our south, like from Spain, if it ran into that milder air, you could actually see some quite big thunderstorms. Look, 20 degrees in the London area for much of this run. It's pretty crazy. A bit cooler at times, but not greatly cool, to be honest. Look at that, 18 to 19 degrees. Slightly cooler shade north. The GFS ensembles for Barnsley, we've got to go for the hometown. And now what I will say is that there is some uncertainty, because there's as you can see, the runs by the 13th of April are diverging. There's some very mild runs up here and some colder runs down here, which hasn't been showing up recently. So again, it might just be one anomalous GFS ensemble suite. But you can see that there are a cluster of runs gathering around that -5 point. Now again, we've got to consider the time of year. It's not going to be that cold you'd expect. You'd probably still get temperatures into the low teens in the south. Slightly cooler shade north, probably a few wintry showers possibly in the north. But there's a lot of uncertainty about that with some of the models. But what I will say is that it does look pretty likely that it will stay mild, but we'll keep you posted on that. Again, it's a long way off, it's uncertain, and a lot of the models aren't going for it. Now, if we do go for one of these colder runs, you can see that it does build heights properly to our north, and I just don't see it happening. I don't see heights rising to our north and west that much, because there's not much support. It's just a couple of GFS ensemble runs, and I don't expect it to come off, because from run to run you can see there's massive differences. There's one there, look, high pressure's toppled like the GFS run showed. There's one high pressure's further to our north. High pressure's over top of the country. A lot of the runs aren't going for it, but there are a couple of anomalous runs bringing in this colder air mass, whatever you want to call it. But I just don't see it happening. So the theme then, for the next week at least, I'd say, is for it to be high and dry. Probably more likely to be rain in the north. Could be a few more wildfires around. Hopefully everyone stays safe with those over the higher ground in parts. With the dry ground, could produce some wildfires in places. But what the general theme is for it to stay quite mild, quite dry, and quite warm as well, quite pleasant. Today's been quite pleasant as well. Today, I think it reached here 18 degrees. Not too bad at all for the time of year, I'd say. Probably way above average as well. So yeah, let me know if you've had any fun in the sun. Some of you have gone away as well. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in to today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye, everyone.